Good morning and welcome to Political Voices on 92.5 Enugu's Dream FM. Political Voices is a session of comments, interviews and analyses of trending political stories as they affect and shape the world around you. Today is Wednesday. It is the 19th day of August 2020. This morning, our focus shifts to the poor state of utilities in rural communities of the Southeast. We'll look at the way forward from that particular discussion. But before we get to that, there are various other issues that are making the headlines in the political space. The House of Representatives Committee on Treaties, Protocols and Agreements has invited the Ministry of Justice to shed light on the sovereignty clause in Nigeria's loan agreement with China. The chairman of the committee, Nicholas Osai, disclosed this on Tuesday at the sitting of the panel, which is investigating external loans and commercial agreements signed by Nigeria. Also on Tuesday, there were indications that the committee members were divided as some of the lawmakers faulted the approach of the chairman. It was gathered that some of the members felt that the chairman was going to an area that did not concern the panel. Moving ahead, the Independent National Electoral Commission has defended its decision to deregister the 22 political parties which the Court of Appeal in Abuja recently ordered to release. And a five-man panel led by the President of the Court of Appeal, Justice Dongban Menson, had in its unanimous judgment delivered on August 10, 2020, reversed the deregistration of the parties on the grounds that the act was carried out in breach of the provision of Section 225A of the Nigerian Constitution. It also ruled that INEC's action of deregistering the political parties while their suit seeking to stop the same act was still pending at the Federal High Court in Abuja constituted an affront on the authority of the court. Of course, asked to respond to the remarks of the court on Tuesday, INEC, through the chief press secretary to the commission's chairman, Mr. Rotimi Oyekomi, said there was no court order stopping it from deregistering the parties as of the time it was done in February of 2020. He said it was only the Action People's Party that obtained a restraining order which was honored by INEC. Those are some of the issues making the headlines in the political space. Remember, we are streaming on 3 platforms. On YouTube, please go to our YouTube channel on Dream TV Enugu. That is Dream TV Enugu. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications to catch our live videos. On Facebook, it's 925 Dream FM. And on Twitter, it is Dream925FM. You can send us a WhatsApp message on 0902 0020 925. Stay with us. We've talked about public utilities here in different areas, but today our focus is on public utilities in rural communities of the Southeast. What is the state of those facilities? We'll find out why we seem to have a deplorable state of public utilities in our rural communities, especially in the Southeast part of Nigeria. This morning I'm joined on the program by Comrade Fidelis Ede. He is the Executive Director, Service Accord Initiative. He is a farmer, lawyer, and former labor leader. Ezudon Walker, you're welcome.
Good morning, my honor.
All right, we will start by asking you, when we talk about this subject matter, we also it drags to a lot of issues, but let's quickly also welcome Dr. Dele Maxwell Ugwai. He's a social commentator and also a lecturer, General Studies Division of Enugu State University of Science and Technology. Good morning to you, Dr. Ugwai.
Good morning, Alex. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Enugu.
All right.
Good morning, Ezudo.
All right.
Good morning, my brother.
Okay. Comrade, let's talk about, do we have a model for various states in the Southeast to take a cue from in providing utilities? Because we've talked about this. This is not the first time we've talked on the issue of utilities. Is there like a model or something that is somewhere where people can look at and say, okay, this is what we're supposed to do? Are we lacking in good examples of what public utilities should be?
I think it is difficult to talk about a model given the divergence in the needs you will find in different communities. Because when you talk about model, the issue that ought to be raised first is to say, what would we want to consider as basic public utilities? And if we're able to identify those, we'll now begin to track in terms of, are there communities, are there combines of human congregations that will not need those? So for us, we will begin to look at what are those basic things government ought to provide for the people to begin to enjoy well-being, for the people to believe that governance seems to connect with them. I will believe that the 2000 Millennium Development Goals provides a kind of an encapsulated package. You will talk about basic education, basic primary education. You will talk about basic health care. You will talk about nutrition. And when you now talk about nutrition, it is not with the lens of what we now have currently in terms of going to feed school children. Nutrition means a robust agricultural policy that provides food for the people. You will talk about the secondary issue, because when people talk about security, they do not know that security does not even fall into the primary needs of the people, because we know that food, shelter, and health comes before that. Now, if you now begin to look at this, you will discover that every community, even from primitive times, ought to have this. But Alex, to take this issue, to situate it within a template that we know that already exists, there is no way we will talk about this issue without trying to find out whether there is an aspect or an organ of government that ought to engineer this process. And we cannot run away from that. When you talk about the rural community, which in no way means, does not mean inferior, you also, by inference, talking about the local government system. So if you look at the schedule, the fourth schedule of the Constitution, in terms of the second item, you will discover that some of the things I've tried to mention are clearly stated there as the role of the local government. Whether you are talking about primary health care, whether you are talking about basic infrastructure for agriculture, whether you are talking about education. But I find education to be key, because when we now talk about education today, people look at education from the way education has been urbanized and privatized. Alex, by 1976, Nigeria had one of the most modern social experiments in education. That was when the concept of universal primary education was introduced, and it was envisaged that by 1982, pupils or children from the age of 6 to 11 ought to have been in school. 24 years later, when the 189 countries adopted the programs of the development Millennium Development Goal, Nigeria was nowhere near that agenda that was set in 1976. And mind you, if you recall, by 76, moving to 77, when the local
development has been hijacked by the second tier of government, which is the state. and that has created a kind of hostile environment to the development of local government administration. For example, Comrade didn't mention model, but I think there used to be model. DIFRI was here. We used to know DIFRI. What is DIFRI? Directorate for Rural, Rural something infrastructure and all that. It was jettisoned, it was abandoned. And when you move around today, you still have a lot of abandoned projects by DIFRI in the rural areas. Number two, the rural areas don't seem to be part of the projections because everything is concentrated in the urban area, and that has increased rural urban migration in the sense that nothing seems to be happening in the rural areas. When we talk of enabling environment in the sense that you have to make the rural area livable. Why should someone from Ugboka, for example, pay 1 million naira rent in Enugu, whereas from Ugboka to Enugu is less than 30 minutes drive? Why should somebody from Uboleke or Ubolafo or Enugu Ezike come to Enugu to stay and be paying 1 million naira, 1.2 million naira annual rent simply because? Why? Because those things that make life meaningful are not in those areas, in the villages, in the rural areas. And when you even come to Enugu itself, we are using Enugu as a template, as a case study, for example. What are the basic utility that you find in Enugu, for example? To me, you have none. You don't have a public water, the basic one. Where are the water system? Running water, public water, you don't have, except maybe in GRA or in independent layout or in New Haven. Then go to other areas you don't have. What of access road? What of basic health care? You don't get all these things. Why? Because concentration is in the city, in the urban area. And the people in the rural areas, they are suffering. When you forget for the press secondary schools, for the press health facilities, for the press public utility you have in the city, where the tragedies, where the casualties are, is when you get to the rural areas. You look at the means of their economic production. As I talk to you now, in 2020, 21st century, people still climb palm tree of 40 feet, 50 feet to get palm head in order to produce palm oil. And those palm tree were planted as old as 100 years ago. Comrade Ede is doing something which is very significant. Tell me how government has been able to help him in order to provide succor to the people in the rural areas. I wanted to visit him in his farm. He said, Master, you can't come, no road, unless you want to trek. That's impediment. And you know that we have people like that all over. Sorry, I'm saying this on air, but these are some of the things that are creating a very hostile environment for the transformation of our rural communities. Local governments seem to have abdicated its responsibilities to the rural areas, and that is why most rural people do not have any sense of connection to the government. They are so detached. The only time they see presence of anything government is during election. Go to rural public schools, go to rural secondary schools, go to rural secondary schools, go to public, what we call public health institutions, primary health cares in the rural area. You will be amazed at what people call hospitals in the rural areas. Now, ordinary health care in rural areas, you don't get. You want to CS For example, a woman who wants to be delivered of a baby, who is due to be delivered of a baby through CS, we have to move from Oji River down to Enugu, because those facilities may not be there, and those that will be there may not be trusted. And the people, the local government,
the very popular Positive funds. Why are the utilities not being put in place?
Mm-hmm. You know, I just told you about how local governments were started in 1976 with 100 million. I do not know today if there is any local government that draws less than 1 billion from the federation account. 1 billion
annually.
You see, what we need to connect here is the fact that the model of governance in Nigeria seems to be anti-people. People in the community, starting from colonialism. But why it is painful, particularly under constitutional democracy, is that under colonialism it was very, very clear that what they needed was to extract the resources of the people. In fact, if you do an analysis of major rail stations in Nigeria, you will discover that they were just centers for cutting away cash crops and agricultural produce. Now, we now got independence, had a structure that retained exactly what operated under colonialism. People will talk about the regional government, yes, but how democratic, how decentralized was the system, different from what you had when we had indirect rule. Under the military, you still had that tendency for central command in terms of, and mind you, one of the major defects remains that in the struggle for independence, Nigerians didn't, today we talk about imposed constitution, that the people were not consulted. But Nigerians will also agree that we never discussed about the model for engaging in the independence struggle. It was like, let's just get independence, every other thing we follow. So there is this messianic impression people had. And after independence, Nigeria adopted an administrative model of welfare. There was this impression that the state was going to provide for everybody. And you know the era of 5 years development plan and all that, and things were just flowing from the top. That system of administration seems to be what is still in operation. Dele talked about the local government disconnecting from the rural area. If you even look at the constitution, if you look at section 7, that talked about democratically elected local governments, which arose from the Udoji reform of 1975, you will discover that apart from how the local government would connect with the state in terms of economic planning and what have you, there is no deliberate provision in the constitution that set out how communities will participate at the local government level. And if you go further, you will discover that the state's assembly is also the one that is expected to make laws for the governance of the local government, just as you had during indirect rule, when it was more of obnoxious politics. Once the governor general speaks, then the thing falls down to every district, and you had divisions, you have district officers and what have you. So what has happened is that there is big disconnect in our appreciating that there are three critical vital tools for mobilizing people. If you talk about a community, first you talk about human resources. How have we developed the human resources at the local, community level? Then you talk about natural resources in Nigeria, which we all agree are dominant at the local level. But where we now have issue is in translating both the human and natural resources into capital resources. And that is the aspect Dele has referred to when he talked about this convergence of everybody, including those who have no need to be in the urban area. But it is the attraction that people can just be in a place, they are not doing anything, they have no skill, but they can still find a way of surviving, you know, through parasiting. So what has happened is that we have still, for me, an indirect rule of, he said it, the only time the people in the rural area have a feel of governance is when an election is approaching, in terms of mobilization to capture their votes. But this capturing of votes does not even weigh with the interest of the people. And you know, when Nigeria in 1979, when other Africa, in fact, Alex, ours is a tragedy each time you go into history. By 1979, most African countries were adopting the one-party system. Nigeria went into multi-party, which was an expectation that we were going to have vigorous political participation, the people, because once you talk about multi-party, it's about choice. But what do we have? We have a multi-party system that is also so centralized that at the end of the day, it is worse than even clear dictatorship. We now hear about Godfather. You now find out that even in the local government, representation are not those thrown up by the people. And if they are not those thrown out the people, how do you now begin to aggregate the interest of the people into policy that will now reflect to being able now to domesticate the public utilities we are talking about? So we have, when people talk about restructure, not that I'm against restructure, but I said even the one we should engage in the constitution to be able to deepen democracy and accountability, we have not even engaged it. So it's just like state creation. When people were agitating, give us more states, and we had more states. What difference has it brought about even those who felt that they were marginalized in the old states from where they have been severed? So in terms of the marginalization of the rural area, they are shut out from the political process. They are there just because they are part of the Nigerian system. Okay. They are not part of the governance. All and right. My last word on that is that, Alex, if you analyze from what Dele said, it's not only that people move into the urban area. Those who also preside over the affairs of the local government do not live there.
And yes, certainly.
And not that they do not live there. They do not even have a feel of what the people there need. And that is why if you watch during elections, people move more to go and make sure that they deliver what they want. And they are immediately after election, people retire. You will recall that in some states, including Enugu, it took a point where the governors were even asking those elected, including councillors, to begin to remain in their wards and all that. So if you have a system where people who represent the rural people are not even there with them, how can their fortunes change? Imagine if Ziggs or Woolsden had conducted the struggle for independence from abroad. Nothing would have changed.
Okay then. All right, thank you so much. I want to just quickly ask you, Dr. Ugwuanyi, before we get to the phone lines, how do we solve this problem of seeming political and developmental alienation of the rural areas in the southeast? What can we do to reverse that trend?
Well, a lot of things can be done. When you come to southeast, for example, apart from Anambra State, and to some extent Imo State, Enugu is almost a one city state. Enugu, Nsukka is a large village by all in this, whatever what you want to call it, but it's a large village because no matter what, there's nothing you need.
But Nsukka isn't a village.
But just no, it's not an urban. I'm from that side. I can't refer to Nsukka as an urban area because I know big buildings don't make urban areas. No. It's not about big buildings. It's not about all these things. It's not about the people. There are things you should see. If I want to eat good meal, I want to cut my hair, I want to go and get something in supermarket, I should be able to walk across the road and get it. Those things are not there. Forget that everywhere is a bustling. No, that doesn't make a city, a place a city or an urban area. So we have only one city, one town in Enugu State, which is Enugu Town. And even when you come to Enugu Town, Enugu is not developing the real sense of it. Enugu is just expanding as a result of population growth. Because when you look at what makes city, what the modern indices of development, I don't think Enugu measure up. You cannot. You just expand it because people are moving in and building bigger. Forget the big houses. Big houses don't make urban area. Don't make for development. Then you go to Ebonyi State, outside Abakaliki, for example, you hardly stay anywhere again 1 week comfortably. You get it. Go to Umuahia, you know, we all see it in Aba. But then Anambra State is always becoming a city state. From Oka to Nnewi, you don't even know when you move into the next town. Maybe because of the road network, maybe because of the people doing a lot of things, and it's based on individuals. But when you talk of government, we are not even talking of, for example, when we come to Enugu, we are talking of government. It's not about the governor alone. The senators, the House of Rep members, the local government chairman. It's a concerted effort. For example, I have privilege of traveling to some countries. I was in Lalibela, Ethiopia, a very small village, but it's developed because light. For 2 weeks I stayed there. Light, the electricity didn't blink for 1 day. I didn't see generator. I didn't see nation. You see that people are well taken care of, and the central government is so far from them, but there's a connection. But here it can't happen. So what I'm saying is that the way forward is this: let's begin to live to our responsibility. As everything should not be on paper. Every government will always mount this idea of a campaign slogan: rural development. Rural development is not about moving road road construction. The road construction is not even there. The health facilities are not even there. The schools, you need to go to rural areas and see what people call public schools. You will cry. And these are the people we expect to come out to challenge people, to compete with people that are in the rural area, that are in the city. And before you know it, a lot of things will go wrong. So it is high time government began to say, look, people should begin to demand accountability, because the problem is this: we are ignorant of our rights. We don't even know what is expected of us as citizens. We don't even know how to take our leadership into account, because just as Comrade said, people, the representative, all the councillors, all the local government chairman, why should we live in Enugu as a House of Assembly member representing Igbeze North, representing the local government? But the House of Assembly is in Enugu. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make it to live there. How many minutes? If the whole thing, if things are normal, how many minutes from Suka? People go to Germany. People work in Göttingen. People work in Hamburg and live in. People work in Kiel and live in Hamburg. People work in Berlin and people work in Göttingen and live in Berlin. And it's so long 3 hours journey. Within 3 hours journey, you know, just not the problem. The present Democratic governor candidate of US, he never lived in Washington DC. He comes every day from Delaware. He was a senator for 40. He has been a senator for 40 years. You see, he has never slept in. He has never lived in Washington D.C. Go and read up his profile. All right. Anyways, I don't want us to dwell on the foreign examples, because. But we are taking an example from them. It hasn't. When they lock down, we lock down for us. This is Political Voices on 92.5 Enugu's Dream FM this morning. We are taking a look at poor state of utilities in rural communities in the southeast. And this morning, I'm joined on the program by Comrade Fidelis Ede. He's Executive Director, Service Accord Initiative, farmer, lawyer, and former labor leader. And also here is Dr. Dele Maxwell Ugwai, social commentator, lecturer,
General Studies Division of Enugu State University of Science and Technology. It's time for you to join the conversation. Remember, we have a TriCast on our social media handles. You can watch us live on our YouTube channel on Dream TV Enugu. Remember to subscribe and turn on notification for that particular YouTube channel. And you can watch us on Facebook, 925 Dream FM, and on Twitter at Dream 925 FM. We'll take some messages from Facebook before we get to the full lines. Benson Michael says, good morning, analysts in the studio. My stand on the issue under discussion is that top-bottom approach to rural development by our development agencies is the major cause of the decay in rural utilities, and our local government system should be given full autonomy because it is their basic role to provide those utilities to rural communities. Angela Echiku says local government autonomy is the best solution so as to allow them to do the fixing of utilities in rural communities. Onyembo says policymaker, it says today's is okay. It says policy and lawmakers should open up the zone for PPP. That's a public-private partnerships through legislations. Water reticulation in Enugu, for example, is doable. It is not rocket science. And Ambassador Martins Chinon says the state of utilities in rural communities is in shambles. I think if our state governors can allow local government chairmen to operate freely, a lot will be done in our rural areas. Cyprian Nicodemus Mbebu says in Nigeria, rural communities, our public utilities, especially in the southeastern part, is not something to write home about just because some political leaders lack political will in rehabilitating the ones that is in the bad state, because most of them live in urban areas. Ovuna Dickland talks about the poor state of utility in rural communities. There's the cost of not granting total autonomy to the local government areas. Meanwhile, the joint account is of no benefit to the local government areas because the local government area chairmen are more of appointment and they don't have the capacity to maintain or attract utilities to the different communities across the local government councils. We will also take some messages from WhatsApp as soon as we can, and we'll take some calls on 09020, I should say 09020020925 and 0809 8888 Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. What's the name and location? Your name is? You're welcome.
I greet everybody there. Especially there. And you get as this is all. So the institution of this country, the way things goes on, the way the management is just like what I am now to say that went somewhere in this world and they tell you that policy and that.
I'm sorry, but we can hardly hear you. We can hardly hear you on the phone line. 0809 8888 or 0902 0020 Let's take some messages from WhatsApp. Ugwai Valentine Chijoke from Nsukka is saying that it seems like government of the southeast is neglecting rural areas in terms of infrastructural development. Our political office holders in the region should look inwards instead of focusing more in the urban areas. For instance, in his hometown, Leja, of course, you guys take advantage of this all the time. Leja in the Nsukka local government area, Welinabo Primary School and our borehole are dilapidated and no efforts by the government to rehabilitate it. No road to bring out our farm produce to sell. No functional hospital. But once election is around the corner, you see politicians coming to promise heaven and earth. Okay, so let's try and take another call. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
What's your name and location?
I'm calling from
You're welcome.
Okay, I want to make my voice to the issue on board. Like the last week I said, the problem with us is this elephant project issue. You don't make a capital of events. How can you elect the cashew industry in Zaria? Then you know the soil is not rich enough to produce enough cashew for the local consumption. So I believe what
should be cited in places where it's needed and where the people will benefit solely from it. Look, in my local community here, we have up to 7 boreholes, none is functional, none is working, no electricity. Every time you ask them, they say there is no gas to power it. But the people that are cited for this, we should have taken into consideration, taking those electricity issues beforehand. Thank you, brother.
All right, and thank you so much. On WhatsApp, we have Comrade Mike Abo. He says, Comrade Eda is really informed and articulate and sound in his expression. Our government has expired, misplaced priorities, and indifference is a problem. He said the political will is zero. Concept and innovation is dead. The black man has a DNA problem. I don't know what you mean by that. Comrade Mike Abo from University of Nigeria, Nsukka. I don't know what you mean by that because I know what DNA means. All right. Yes. Okay. This one says on WhatsApp. Say hello. Good morning, Alex. Poor state of utilities in rural areas in the southeast. The southeast leaders hate themselves. The mentality is to enrich themselves and their generation forever without knowing that a tree cannot make a forest. Says his supervisor in school happens to come from the north. He told him that every Nigerian is corrupt, but southeast is the worst, by making away with money made for ordinary social amenities, which we all know. Look at those representing us in the House. They are just there for themselves. One person have been representing Mariden. When you do this name calling, the person you are calling out isn't here. So when the two of you are present, we can have that conversation. All right? So, I think, okay, we'll try and take some more calls. 0902-0020925. Okay, let's take some more messages on Facebook. The phone lines don't seem to be as excellent as we wanted. Onyebuchi Brandon says, hello, good morning, Alex. Poor state of utilities in the rural areas in the southeast. They say southeast leaders hate themselves. I think I just read your message. Okay. On WhatsApp. Ike Chukwueze says, good morning, Dream FM. Your program is excellent and good. Keep it up. I'm watching live. Kudos. All right, then, from 9th Mile. Thank you, Ike Chukwueze. And Arthur Ekwu Theophilus Chike is texting from Owerezukala in Anambra State. Says, holders pay more attention to the urban areas of their states, thus leaving the rural areas in the hands of the local government chairman. These men access little or no fund to help them push utilities within their domain, and thus the lack becomes inevitable. Okay, so a number of messages flooding in, but I'll have to come back and talk about some of the issues raised by the those who sent in messages and one or two of the callers. Dr. Dele Mark Sologwai, you've heard the issue. Do you believe that people who are elected to represent the people are abandoning their functions and helping themselves instead of everyone else?
That can be further from the truth. It's a very empirically, that is what you see. Because when you say you represent me, but you are the only person comfortable, you are the richest person, your house is the best in that constituent. Because whenever I hear them say, I represent the good people of so and so, only you are good, other people are not good, back home. You get it? You go for a function, only you have a 3-4 Jeeps, 2020 model. The people you represent, you're supposed to be their servants. Technically, they are wallowing in poverty. You get it? So how many of them have gone to Abuja? How many of them have come to Enugu as a representative of their people? And after their tenure, return to the rural area, return to where they came from. They stay put. Why? Because they see that they've detached themselves. They know that's like what gave right to government reserve area. I think as we know the history. When they finished from abroad, they came back. They couldn't see why they should be part of that people, and they decided to create their own government reserve area. We are reserve people, so they can't see somebody coming from Enugu to Abuja after 2 tenure of 8 years. You don't see the person coming to live in Enugu again. It's absolutely impossible, and that shows you that they've gone there to represent their own pockets at the detriment of the people. And that's why somebody will live in Abuja or will be deciding what to situate, the kind of project that will be suitable for my community in Isugwenu Wezike, where he has not been to in the last 2-3 years. Instead of you say, look, let the people determine their own problem, determine their own priority. There are problems. It's not only 1, 2, 3, but there are priorities: school, borehole, health facility, and road. Which one is more important? This is the fund available. This one is more. But they don't do that. They are more interested in the contractor. They are more interested in how they make money. They are more interested in what they do. Now tell me, how many low-cost housing are in the local governments across Southeast? Go to Enugu, go to Abia, go to Ebonyi, go to Imo, go to Anambra. How many government low-cost housing estates are in rural areas, are in local government? You don't have those things. How many model schools? Go to Ondo State, go to Ekiti State, go to Osun State. When you see what they call secondary school, you will think it's a first-class university. Go there. I was there. I'll be just before COVID. When you see my secondary school in Ondo State, St. Joseph College, where I graduated, I left. I went there. It was another thing else. And they have that kind of secondary school, at least two in each local government. What do we have in Southeast? Where are the modern secondary schools? Where are hospitals? Ondo State has 3 universities. But what do we have here? What they have succeeded is that one in the north of the state, Adekunle Ajasin University, one at the center of the university, Ondo, that Ondo State University of Medical Sciences. Then they have one at Okitipupa, that's Adekunle Olusegun Agagu University of Science and